Welcome to Redefining Engagement. I'm Francesca Duma, Director of Audience Development and Strategy at Contribui. And in this show, I speak to leaders and innovators in the media industry so that we can bring tips, wisdom, ideas, and even some things to avoid so that we can all do more engagement better. So without further ado, let's move on to our next guest. Hey, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Redefining Engagement. I'd love to introduce Bence, who's, would you mind introducing yourself and tell me a little bit about what you do, please?
Of course, thank you. So I'm coming from media. I started my own magazine back in 2016. After that, I started working with other publishers in Hungary. I was I'm still dealing with business development and corporate development issues. So more on the publishing side, not really the editorial one. So this is my background, doing business development, actually.
And I love that you're approaching it from a different angle from a lot of the people that I've spoken to so far, especially having started your own magazine is a completely different world and kettle of fish compared to what we've heard up until now. My first question really is, what is audience engagement? What does that mean to you?
I think for us or for my companies that I've worked with, first of all, it's the main part of the story is to grow outreach and grow engagement. So give the dynamic to this process. And I think this is the first step. So when I funded the magazine, or when we funded the magazine with my co-founder, we were only caring about growing the reach and increasing readership, increasing the outreach. And after that, as we realized that numbers are or the magnitude of the numbers is if you have a solid readership is not really that important. We started to pay attention to engagement. So for me, engagement is like bringing the people back or approaching new people, and I think this is the most important part, to bring people back to your platform, whether it's a media outlet or a service platform or other kinds of business, but just to bring people back.
Okay, so it's all about people, bringing them to your platforms. And you mentioned at the beginning that you weren't necessarily focusing on that first. How has this definition changed or evolved over the past few years for you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning, it was all about numbers or the magnitude of numbers. So page views, unique visitors, etc. And I think it got changed as we had more things to sell. I mean, advertisement spaces, but also other services. We realized that we can sell these kind of services to people who are engaged. So I think it was more like for us thinking from engagement perspective meant that's profitability of our venture is higher if we take these metrics into consideration.
And in your experience, like, what are the aims? You've mentioned advertising. What are the main aims in this audience engagement strategy that you're trying to deliver on?
Yeah, I mentioned advertisement because advertisement is the most typical media revenue stream, but we didn't have any, so our advertisement revenue stream wasn't so strong. So that's why we had to develop other revenue streams, which, for example, content monetization, of course, but we also sold and we're still selling other services to our customers, to our B2C and also B2B customers. So in this regard, I mean, the most important part in engagement is that you can get the traffic less expensive as you would spend on Google or Facebook. So here in this, I'm coming from a different perspective. So on our site, we market our services, and we use our media outlet to market our services. It's like a vertically integrated market. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's cheaper to get those traffic through an engaged readership rather than buying clicks from Google and Facebook. And I think as the industry is evolving into this way, so in many titles and many publications are having their own verticals, all different verticals, but not just content-based verticals, but other verticals like you can everybody's speaking about the cooking applications, the New York Times or the Guardian, or other other more service like revenue streams. And I think an engaged users. I think the main idea here is that an engaged user can resonate more on your additional services, no matter whether it's an outside service like an advertiser or an inside service like you develop other revenue streams by your own.
So are you saying to me in fewer words that it's cheaper to once people are with you, it's cheaper to engage the people you've got than to go off and get new people?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is the main part of engagement, I think, and this will be even more important because I think the future of media is tending to a structure or a setting when the media or a publishing house is not just a content provider but also service provider, like it was it was in the traditional media setting when you could read the classifieds, you could read additional information on your community, and etc. etc. And I think this kind of connection with audience, what we call engagement, will drive or will improve or will help the media organizations other activities, more service-like activities.
And in your world, how is this measured? What's the measurement that you're mainly focusing on?
I think different organizations can have different measures, different KPIs. It really depends on the business needs. But I think the most typical measure we were using and we still use is the minutes spent or the time spent on site, the pages visit per user per visit. So things like that. So these kind of quantitative measures. So these measures can help you understand how your audience is growing and how your audience is behaving. And they are not so hard to track. So, I mean, there can be other measures as well, but it's kind of hard to track. And then the more sophisticated ones. So I think this cost-benefit analysis for these measures are the optimal. But maybe there will be other tools or other technical tools to measure engagement more. I would say, or more accurately, I would say that, for example, if you have comments on your site or comment section on your site, that can be also a good measure. I'm working with a company or with a media outlet which has comment on their site, and I mean, commenting, and I know you are also dealing with commenting, but commenting is a very impressive additional feature. I think it's a service of a media company. I know here a publishing house or a media outlet, which I think 20% of their page views are driven by commenters. So I think it's a huge thing, but on the other hand, it needs more effort, to moderate. Especially, I mean, there can be many kinds of issues like hate speech, fake news, etc. And I think you need more effort to control it. But I think this can be a cost-benefit analysis which a publishing house should make.
It's a very what was the word? There's a very fine balance between like providing things like comments and they're very manual processes to deal with these comments and the rest of it, but it brings so much benefit, and I can completely understand why brands stay away from certain things like comments or UGC.
Yeah,
because it is a lot of work. However, the
you cannot
benefits
control
are huge.
it. Yeah, you cannot really control it. Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges or hurdles. What do you think are the other hurdles and challenges that your experiences? What is stopping news brands, for example, from engaging better?
I think it's because It's because tradition. So in the last couple of decades, newspapers or bigger publishing houses just didn't focus on engaging because they didn't have the technical tools that they do now. So I think it's about mindset, right? So if you live in times when your main role was the gatekeeper role, and you didn't need to provide, or you didn't need to care about, I wouldn't say care about, but you didn't have the tools to be more engaging because it was a one way direction, right? So publish articles, sent to the printing house, then distributed. It's not that flexible as now, especially after Facebook or after social media. So other social media before Facebook. So it just easier to provide these kind of, I wouldn't say technical tools, not just technical tools, but these kind of mindset. Because I think it's all about mindset in media. But I think this might be true for lower professions, but I know media because I'm working in media, is that the hardest thing is not really the technicalities. I mean, you can implement many kinds of tools, analytical tools, KPIs, funnel management tools, but the hardest thing is to make the use of it, right? And just to train people and train the journalists, train the editors, train the publishing part of the HR to use those tools. And I think this is the hardest part.
I can't agree more. We just came back from Helsinki and at the INMA conference, and they were saying the same thing. We were talking about AI as tech, and everybody
Yeah,
was, it was all communication and teams and communication and
yeah,
teams. And it is the biggest challenge. Business is easy, tech is easy, people are hard.
yeah,
And it really is that. And I'm really interested about this change that you're talking about, from going from a world where we broadcast out to a world where there's potentially a bit of two-way engagement. We have one extreme, which is
yeah,
social media, where it's everywhere, and then we have the other extreme where it's broadcasting. We're somewhere in that middle bit.
yeah.
What strategies have proven most effective in engaging audiences in your experience?
I also heard this on a conference, but I think just to think like how your audience thinks. So just hire people from that audience at first. So I think to be authentic and be credible. And I think many editorial teams just forget this, that they wanna, I mean, especially now in these Gen Z conversations, I mean, everybody's talking about how to approach the new generation, how to do this and this, but in many cases I feel like they are talking from an ivory tower, that they
Yeah.
just want to measure and just want to see the needs and etc., which is good. I think getting insights from the audience is also a must, but just to be the audience. And I'm not telling that we should only hire Gen Z people in a new media companies, but just bunch of them or a couple of them or couple, just to be more authentic. And I think in many cases this is not really about just content, but also engaging. So I mean, people who can be engaged know how they can be engaged. And I think but I think this is also about mindset. And after that, you need also technical tools like commenting, like other maybe user generated content, and also, I mean, ask people what do they need, or what kind of service do they need from your end. Because I mean, in this sense, I feel like that many media companies, because of this path dependency, still operate with a narrow focus, right? So publishing articles, now videos or podcasts, but you can be also more, or one can be also more broad, not too broad, not to lose focus and not to lose attention, but we could be broader, and ask people what do they need, and see how we can match the needs of the audience and our capabilities.
So are you saying, in a sense, that a lot of brands probably don't know their audience well enough? Like, they're not hiring them, but they also don't necessarily fully understand them, because that's one of the barriers that is stopping us from doing it better.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about other brands.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna say any bad things to other brands. But my experience suggests that this is about also information that they don't really ask them, and they don't. But I think they monitor in many newsrooms here monitor the trending topics, the the trending topics, but we don't really ask them what they need. And I think we should also ask them. Of course, you shouldn't be biased after that, so there should be a professional standard. If an audience wants to read, I don't know, always a given topic, I mean, we can, or the editorial boards can also, they're also responsible for choosing among the right topics, choosing among the topics, and choose the right ones and the right division between given topics and given desks. But I think it's about having a more conversational or more multi-directional relationship with them.
I agree. I didn't mean to make it sound like I was pushing you to take one brand or
another. No. But
no.
I mean, if you consider social media is doing like this. So it's not a just, but they provide a very solid and robust platform, data-driven platform for the user needs, whether it's UGS or other parties' content. I mean,
They know their audience very well. They serve them exactly what they want. We're in a place where we don't only serve what they want, but also sometimes what they need, or what they might not realize they potentially need.
And we don't really I think we don't really know, or we just cannot really imagine that we can serve those needs, because so I think it can be, so we could be more broad in many cases.
And at what point in this process, in this engagement process, do you consider your audience engagement? Like, how should that take shape?
So how should we change? It's a good question. I would say that. So I would start with the technology. So what kind of technologies are affordable for media companies? Because I mean, we cannot be the new Facebook or new Instagram or new Twitter or X or something like this, because that part of the technology, that part of the sphere has a significant competitive advantage and the first mover advantage. But there are many tools which are affordable, and if you do the P&L, and if you calculate the gains and the losses or the costs, then gains can overweight losses. So I think we should check what kind of technology we have, and after that, let's optimize these golden triangles of technology, user needs, and editorial capabilities, and let's design new products and new verticals in this sense. And yeah, so I would pick these three main perspectives or dimensions.
And do you have any examples for me, or could you share a successful initiative that has significantly boosted engagement? It could be an example of your own, or an example that you've been part of or seen in the outside world.
I would say from the outside world, I think what these non-traditional verticals, like the cooking vertical or any additional e-commerce or classified verticals, I think they can provide those initiatives provide great examples how to think a little bit outside of the box So because there were or the mini games, there were still in the past there were crosswords and sudokus in the daily newspapers, but the news publishers I think somehow saw the puzzle how to accommodate these kind of features in the new technology stack. And from my perspective, and for my track record, I would say that engage with the content creators. So we at my outlet, what I was founded before, we started to have events, and we started to have virtual events also, and the readers could reach out to journalists and content creators during a meetup or a virtual meetup or roundtable discussion and things like that. I mean, this is not, if it's an offline event, it's not really scalable. That's the downside. But if it's a Zoom event or it's an online event, then it's I think it still can be scalable. But we should remember that we shouldn't target our main. So we shouldn't target the main audience or the whole audience with our engagement efforts. I think we should, in many cases, the engaged users, especially in my cases, are, let's say, the 15 or 20% or maximum 20% of the outlets. So I mean, and I think if we have the measures, especially, I mean, if you have a bigger publication, then that's still a significant number. But we shouldn't target everybody with an engagement policy or effort. We should pick the engaged or the possible engaged users, and I think we can be narrow in this regard.
I really like that. You've mentioned a few things there that were really interesting. The games has come up a few times, which I found great. But this idea of events, it has come up in a lot of these conversations around how, a lot of media brands are trying to find ways of engaging audiences with something that they won't get on social media.
Yeah.
But not many of the people that I've spoken to have made it so clear that we're not targeting everyone with this.
Yeah.
So how did you get to that conclusion? At what point were you like, when we do these events, this is what we're aiming for? What are the aims of the events in the long run?
I mean, it's about thinking of, so when we started this vision, or we started use this methodology, we didn't know about anything. We didn't know anything about funnel management and this vertical route or horizontal route of users, that from free users you can convert somehow to subscribers or something like that. But we started to use an approach that for each level of consumption, we offered something, right? So content or these events or meetups or something. And as people went deeper and deeper in the funnel, they could get this more engaging content. And I think it's whether they got engaged because of the more engaging content, or whether they consume that content because they were more engaged. I don't know, and I don't really want. I mean, I can know this, but I think that's a secondary question. But as they go down deeper in the value chain, you should be able to provide more engaging stuff to be there. I mean, to attract and to get their attention, and to obtain and obtain their attention, and to solidify that attention. So I think, I don't know whether I answer your question, but it's about the value proposition, and your value proposition should be more engaging.
And And on that, events one of the ways that your audience is interacting directly with these editorial teams? And are there other ways that they are interacting at the moment directly with your editorial teams?
I would say events, yes. We are also publishing books, which in many cases, or in most of the cases, are written by one of our editors or journalists. So we are running a publishing house in Pszichológia. So that's why there's a huge need, unfortunately, for psychological topics, especially after COVID. So we started to build this ecosystem of psychological content. And also not just digital free articles, but also deeper and more engaging content like events, like books, and things like that. And I think this is about, so people, if especially in this domain, but I think especially in this domain, but I experience in other industries or other subsectors that people really are engaging, especially in small markets like Hungary, right? The Hungarian market, people are engaging with the authors, and the authors have a power and authority of and the very self brand. You can call it self brand. That I think the audience need those feelings, or need those feeling to be able to attach or to connect to the author. And I think there are many ways. I mean, WhatsApp groups, events, books, master classes. I mean, things like that.
It's ways of creating more authenticity within the brand. Yeah. And do you have any examples for me of audience engagement that might have surprised you? Something that you weren't expecting?
I think this connectivity, or these kind of connections, these personal connections to authors, was very, very interesting. So interesting to experience, because before that I thought that the media company should be a traditional media company, producing articles and publishing in digital or print. But I think when I realized how the personality of an author, or personality of how personality matters in this, I think for me, I cannot say any given momentum that okay, I got it, but I mean, we started the magazine in 16, and I think by 18 we realized there were many sub audiences in our audiences connected really to an author or to a given topic. And I think this kind of embeddedness, or this kind of connectivity, it's a great value. And that's why in most of the cases, authors and editors have a significant power and significant role in driving engagement. So it's not just about your nice and fancy front page or fancy newsletter, but the tone, and the personality and the personal connection.
It's on one side it's so branding, and on the other side it has to be so personal as well. It's a very interesting kind of way of seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the big television deals in the US market now, for them in sports, they earn seven figures, the big personalities, and especially if they are only a blogger, or not a blogger, but not a full-time broadcaster, because I think people just connect to those guys.
It's the same as I always think, why do they always hire big movie stars for cartoons? We don't even get to see them, but for some reason that personality behind it, people kind of just associate the cartoon with it as well.
And I mean, I think a publisher should diversify. So I think if a publisher in an optimal scenario, the publisher can choose among these alternatives. So whether a technical tool like a comment section, whether a personality, whether other verticals like book, like events, and I think so the engagement strategy should be the mixture of these kind of different tools and assets in a publisher's hand.
100%. 100%. And let's talk a little bit about the future for a second. Where do you see the future of engagement going? I was going to say between the next 3 to 5 years, but that's still, in the next 3 years. Where do you see it going?
I think other verticals will be discovered. So other meaningful verticals like the cooking, like the mini games, like classified, but more added value classified. So this affiliative market, affiliative sites, or this top 10 laptops for school start articles. And I think there will be many of these kind of things. We just don't really know yet how to set up a value proposal for the new verticals. But I think there will be others, and I think because there will be others, there will be more engaged users on that end. Of course, there will be, I think, more robust or more efficient technical tools. Like, I think commenting is getting back, and other user-generated content can be also valuable. We have in this scenario we have to find the right balance that what kind of UGS features can be set up on a new site, because we cannot really copy social media and we cannot really copy user-generated content driven sites, but we should find a way to cherry pick and to adapt those things to the new site, or magazine site. It can be also magazine and other publications. And I think, as I mentioned, this word, I would phrase this, or I would label this as vertical expansion. Let's find new ways or new services that can be offered to the users, but not on a given vertical, but a deeper and also scalable service portfolio. We mentioned events, books, master classes. In many publications, they start to have these ed tech platforms, like, I don't want to mention them names, but these kind of things.
It's interesting because we're talking about how we're diversifying the engagement, diversifying in a sense revenue by providing all these services. One of the things that I'm also thinking about is like, what skills are we going to need from media professionals if we are diversifying down this road? Like, how do you see that changing?
It's interesting, and I think it's not just about engagement, but I think a media company now, because the technology is expensive, and I think our biggest value is that we can find the balance between technology, story, or narrative, and user engagement, or media company won't be a true tech company. We don't really want to be a tech company, because being a tech company needs a different mindset, and it's more expensive. Media company, I think a good media company can find the balance between this tech, editorial, publishing matters, and also the user needs and the users. So I think we should have a more flexible mindset. I know that I think I'm not really inventing the wheel, but what I experience the most in most of the times here is that we just don't really want to be, and we just don't really want to jump out of the box and believe that our biggest value is not really in the distribution network or in the printing house network or in the logistics or in the supply chain, not in these, but that media company can mediate these kind of technological and user and editorial stakeholders. A good media company is balancing between these kind of stakeholders, but we shouldn't be one of them. So we shouldn't be a tech company, we shouldn't be a printing house, we shouldn't be a distributor company, but we should just balance and just produce quality content and find the users who are interested in.
A lot of editors would be hearing this going, yes, completely agree. And a lot of CEOs are like, oh, I don't really know. But
Yeah.
probably, yeah. And what impact has increasing audience engagement had on your organization's bottom line? You talked a little bit about KPIs, about time spent on page. Looking at your verticals, how have you translated that into cash?
I think that's the hardest part to tell, and not because it's confidential, but because it's still very hard to connect this gradual data or this viewership metrics with financial ones. So I think we know that we sold this amount of copies, we sold this amount of tickets, we sold this amount of consulting hours, but we still really don't know, or we have a clue. I'm not saying that we don't really have a clue, but we don't have a hard metric or a hard connection between engagement and profitability.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of brands are in that same box.
It's hard to tell because there are many externalities in this. So how measuring engagement is also noisy, and measuring there's a huge amount of noise in the digital sphere and digital world, and the thing that we have a bottom line. Unfortunately, it's a positive bottom line, but it's very hard to connect those numbers.
I think a lot of brands find it difficult to connect, and I think it makes it so much more difficult for people within the organization to sell engagement upwards. Like if you are, I don't know, an editor or head of marketing or whoever you are in a team, your boss is going to say, okay, what's the ROI on this? Yeah. And if you don't understand how much each person engaging costs, it's so hard to do that. And they're not qualitative or quantitative. It is very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult because you ask top line, bottom line, but I think bottom line is harder. So you can match or you can pair engagement rates with revenue. I think it's easier, but the hardest part is the cost affiliation. To pair the cost to your revenue and to what's the cost of engaging the user? What's the cost of producing that articles and what? And it's kind of hard to tell. And I don't really know whether I'm not saying this from a publisher point of view. I'm saying this as an editorial point of view. That should we need to tell, or should we need to tell that this article cost this money and cost this revenue, and and that can be a vicious cycle because we're just navigating through profits, and that was the point that I was trying to make, is that media is really not just about this kind of profit-led mentality. We have this, of course, because we want to be above the surface, but in many cases quality also matters. And I mean, and the hardest part is to quantify the effect of the quality. And how engagement comes into the picture is that engagement is strongly correlated with quality, and you cannot really make bottom line reasoning on quality, because I mean, and not because of the revenue part, but because of the cost part. So it can be tricky.
It's so interesting. You mentioned, like, should we be telling the editorial teams, you know, how much the article was cost to make and how much it's making? There is a brand who does that every single day. And then I know of another brand who, like, instead of doing that, they talk about, you've made this amazing quality, but no one's seeing it. So what's the point in writing it if it's not seen? So there's so many different ways of approaching stuff that I find fascinating.
That's a typical problem of digital media. I mean, you print, you didn't have on print. You had the bad daily paper or bad magazine and not performing well, but you didn't know why. I mean, mostly it was because of the front page, and you couldn't really measure the contribution of the loss from given tasks, right? But now I think it's very, very easy. But that's why I think media is not just about business; it's also about quality and cultural, or I don't know, not business measures and not business related motivations.
100%. And one last question for you.
Sure.
What is an engagement hack that you could offer someone that's probably starting out on their engagement journey?
Engagement hack. So I think it's not a hack. I mean, it's a no-brainer to ask people, right? But ask them what they need. Ask them in front. I ask them. You shouldn't make a confidential survey on 1,000 people or 500 people. No. Ask them on your front page. Ask them on your social. Ask them on. Have a column or have a section on your page where you ask people about their needs, about their opinions. And I think the other version of this approach is let them comment. But I think if you let them comment, that's also good. But it's not about the people; it's about the article and whether the readers can express their thoughts under the article. But asking them in front, that can help. But of course, I know there are many titles because of brand reasons or because of, I don't know, because of several reasons they cannot do this. But we were fortunate enough that we were coming from scratch, and we didn't have any restrictions in this. But ask people, and they will tell you what they need.
You say it's not a hack. It is, in a sense, because it's so simple, maybe. People skip it. I think that does happen. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I loved the hack, and that was such an interesting conversation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.